Hi, I'm David, and this is High Shelf Gaming. Today, we're going to be taking a first look at Cyberpunk Red, the brand new role-playing game from our Talsorian Games. I have to tell you, I am so excited for this game. I've been playing Cyberpunk for 20-something years. I got started in college. I've been running games ever since. I've been playing games ever since. I've been looking forward to this for a very long time. If you've been playing the game as long as I have, you have certain expectations around Cyberpunk. If you are new to Cyberpunk, welcome to the family. This is a fun, fast game, and I just love it to tiny pieces. This is, of course, our first look at it, so these are my kind of initial raw impressions of the book and of the content within the book, with, future videos going into greater depth as we go along. Real quick to talk a little bit more about High Shelf Gaming. We are traditionally a podcast talking about tabletop gaming, and we also do a lot of actual plays, which means live playing of games. We have a big playlist of all of the Cyberpunk games we've been running, including Cyberpunk Red, because again, we got early access to the rules. We have 30 plus episodes of Cyberpunk Red content down below, following a family of nomads that has a group of edge runners attached to them as they tour around California. Let's dive into Cyberpunk Red. With the new book, we are in the year 2045, so 25 years in the future from the 2020 book. There's a lot of lore updates. You talk about things like the nuking of Night City, the time of the Red, the global kind of dust storm that made red skies for a long time. The Jumpstart Kit talks about some of this stuff in a high level. The book definitely gets into deeper detail. Every corner of the globe is mentioned, but admittedly, the book really focuses a lot on the primary city of Cyberpunk, Night City, right? Obviously. But everything from the High Riders to the colonies down below to the raft colonies to, every continent on the planet, they all get at least a mention, a brief update as to what they're up to, and it's not pretty, right? It's bad everywhere you go, but that's part of why we love Cyberpunk, right? I will probably not be getting too much into the lore. I do want to point out there's some really great channels out there like Mad Queen Show and John the Wise. They dive a lot into that kind of stuff. By all means, I've got some links up somewhere on this. Click on those. Go check out their channels. Really great content, gets into all that stuff. I, however, want to talk about some of the bigger mechanical changes with Red. The first thing is around character creation. So in 2020, if you've played that game, there really was only like one main character creation method, and that was the point buy system, right? You spent points to get stats, and then you picked your skills and all that kind of stuff. With Cyberpunk Red, there's really three methods. They call them the Street Rats, the Edge Runners, and the Calculated, or Complete Package. My apologies. Street Rats are like, honestly, I think this could have been a little bit simplified. I don't know that 3 was the right number, but I can kind of see why they did it. With Street Rats, these are like, I would see these almost like as a one-shot character or as an NPC, because everything's kind of prescriptive. The stats are, they wiggle around a little bit, but you're going to get basically the same stats, useful stats for all of them, and you're going to create you're going to create the expected template for that role, right? It's going to be an accomplished fixer. It's going to be a good med tech. It's going to be a good exec, right? But it won't have all the customizations that you as a player or you as a GM may like. So that's why I say these are probably for one-shots or for your first game or for NPCs where you just need some quick stats, you need a gear list, and you don't really want to make a lot of decisions. You want to get into the fun, right? And that's what the Street Rat package is. It is straight to gaming as fast as possible because you don't make a lot of decisions, right? The next level, Edge Runners, are kind of like, there's parts of edge running that's a lot like 2020. The stat selection is frankly a lot like the Street Rat I mentioned earlier. You get some variance in stats, but not a lot. But where it really shines is in the, or really where it really deviates, I should say, where it really deviates is in the skill selection. The Street Rat skill list is like the 2020 skill list. Your role comes with fixed skills. Pick the ones you like. A bunch of them have to be at a 2, and fill in the rest of your skill points as you see fit. Gear is kind of the same thing. You're given kind of a list to pick from. You're given a list of cybernetics to pick from, and you don't really worry too much about the costs, right? You just kind of pick from the list, and you end up with a character. You make a few decisions. You can tweak your character a little bit, but it's not going to be too far removed from the template that is in the Street Rat version. The complete package is the package for the seasoned player who wants to fiddle with all of the stats. They want to get, they want to pick exactly which skills they're going to learn, even if it's against type, right? Like, a net runner who's really good at martial arts or something like that. The complete package is going to get you there. If you want a kind of a character that's going to have some unexpected stats and skills in them, complete package is the way to go. You do have to make a lot of decisions, and at the end of all of that, when you get into cyberware and gear and all of that kind of stuff, Papa Pondsmith, he hands you a big greasy wad of money for you to go buy all your stuff. And if you miss something, sucks to be you, right? So it really is one of those things. Like the complete package, I would say, is maybe not your first character, but it's probably your second character, right? Because it's the point buy system, it's the cash system, it's the okay, I've seen the world, I kind of know how it works. Now I want to make a character that is exactly what I want, not a template or something that's close to the boilerplate version. I want to make something that's wholly mine. That's the complete package. And you see references to it throughout character creation. I say this could be simplified because, frankly, the character creation portion of the book is quite lengthy because it has to fully describe all 3 methods of making characters, and that takes several pages, right? The end result is, if you want to go quick, you can go quick, and if you want detail, you can do detail. But I don't know how really they could have simplified all those things, but there are a lot of pages dedicated to, picking stats and skills based on the 3 different methods. The last thing to kind of mention around character creation is life paths. So life paths are a cornerstone of Cyberpunk. If you've never played Cyberpunk before, it is a gem, okay? It is so good that D&D is doing it now. If you go and check out the Xanthar's Guide to Everything, there's a life path system in there. Where'd they get that life path system? Mike Pondsmith, making Cyberpunk, right? And the life path system for GMs, it's critical. It is a bunch of little notes about your player characters' histories, right? Lovers, enemies, friends, who's after them, how far will those people go to get the character? All that kind of stuff is buried in the life path system. It's a really good backstory generator. With this game, they've expanded it. So instead of just the general life path system that everybody gets, now each role gets a couple extra boxes of life path. This is a lot like how in 2020 there was the media book and the fixer book and the solo book and the nomad book, right? And all of those books had custom life paths for those roles. This is now included in Cyberpunk Red, which is great because these days, gaming companies aren't making 20 supplemental books for us to buy. They really got to kind of put it all in one big book and then give us other big substantial, supplement books. It's a really fun add to the life path system. Again, if you've never done life paths, I highly recommend you go through it. Quite frankly, you don't have to go through the life path system, but it is a really powerful tool to use, and it's one of the cornerstones of the Cyberpunk role-playing game. So just know if you're coming from the old systems, they did make some changes here. I think those changes are good. And to pick on the Neo tribes real quick, the life path system in there, references a lot of the old Neo tribes book, and I love that. Right? I mean, they They pull in inspiration, obviously, from the older stuff, and they seed it into this book, and it's a really good experience. Let's dive into combat, right? High points. Armor is different. Cover is different. Okay? No more armor layering. It's a big deal. If you've never played Cyberpunk, there was the potential for a character to have, a flak vest and then maybe some cybernetic armor underneath them, and they might be hiding behind a car or something that's providing an additional layer of armor. And then there were rules for armor layering, and when you got shot, how the armor got weakened over time, because if you're from D&D, armor makes it harder for you to take hits. Cyberpunk, armor doesn't stop you from getting shot. It just stops you from taking damage. It is straight up damage reduction that reduces over time throughout combat. Okay, and so that's how armor is very different in Cyberpunk than in other games. With Cyberpunk Red, there's no more armor layering. Just whatever your best armor is, that is the armor rating that matters for your character, and armor has gone down effectively. Like the old Kevlar vest was 10 points of stopping power. Now the Kevlar situation is 7 points of stopping power. So, armor starts off at a lower level in a lot of cases. Like the top end levels are a lot lower than they used to be, that kind of thing. Also, cover is no longer an additional layer of armor that gets weaker over time. Cover is now flat hit points, right? If you're hiding behind a steel door, that door is worth so many hit points. When it loses those hit points, the door is considered destroyed and is no longer protecting you. So cover is frankly a lot weaker than it used to be, but it's a lot simpler, right? I remember one really hairy combat scene at the end of our 2020 game where a character was hiding behind cover and they had armor, and we were having to track all these things to figure out how much damage the character was taking. And it was a lot of bookkeeping. It felt very real, which was part of the joy. But there's a lot of bookkeeping with the old armor system. So I like that they went to the simplified armor system where cover is just flat hit points, but it is a trade-off, right? So if you're looking for verisimilitude, if you're looking for realism, some of that has been taken away for expediency at the table, right? To get into the next round of combat, to get to the next roll of damage quicker, right? And I think it's a fair trade-off. It works for me, even as an old school guy. I like it. We've been using it for months now, and it feels good, right? It's fast, it's brutal, and it works really well for us. The other thing to note, weapons have been simplified. No longer is the weapon list several assault rifles and pistols with little, H&K, MP whatever, and Armalite, this and that and the other. A lot of those manufacturer names are gone. It is just medium pistol, heavy pistol, very heavy pistol, assault rifle, sniper rifle. GMs, I think it's up to you to add in the brands. I think it's up to you to decide which company made this rifle. Also, because there is one assault rifle to rule them all, there's no variations in the assault rifles. All assault rifles in Cyberpunk Red do the same damage, they have the same range, they have the same mag. You can get extended mags, you can get barrel or drum mags and all that kind of stuff, but the point is that all of the assault rifles are the same. All of the medium pistols are the same. As a GM, what I intend to do is to add in some of those flavorings, right? You go and get a better heavy pistol, maybe you pay more money for it, and it gives a little extra damage, or it carries an extra couple of rounds of ammunition in the mag, right? So I intend to seed in some of those differences that I'm used to, but if you're brand new to Cyberpunk, just stick with the, every compound bow in D&D is the same, every heavy pistol in Cyberpunk is the same, right? And if you want to make some changes, you certainly can, but maybe look to the older books to get that inspiration on exactly how to do it. The other thing to note is while pistol damage is relatively similar to what it was, assault rifle damage has gone down. It used to be 6d6, now it's 5d6, right? And that is, I guess it kind of makes sense because armor is weaker, makes sense for the guns to come down a little bit in damage. By all means, go through and check it out. There are some key differences between them from the old version and the new, but all in all, assault rifles are still deadly. They still, spit out tons of lead, and they can still kill a guy in a single round. But it's also kind of more likely, if the guy's wearing armor, he's probably going to survive the first round, right? And that's just by nature of the new set of rules. The other major change is around auto fire. So in the old system, if you decided to go full auto, you just pulled the trigger and said, GM, I'm going full auto. I'm spending all my bullets. And you rolled, and a bunch of your bullets would hit, and a bunch of them wouldn't, and you'd have to sit there and roll damage and hit locations for every single bullet. That took a long time. It was super deadly, but it took a long time, right? In the new game, there is a flat skill, auto fire. You say, I'm going to auto fire. Your gun spends 10 bullets, if it has 10. If it doesn't have 10 bullets, it can't auto fire. But it spends 10 bullets out of the mag, and if you hit, you roll 2d6, and then that damage is multiplied by either 3 if it's a submachine gun, or by 4 if it is an assault rifle. And if you're quick at the head math, you're going to note that the top end of assault rifles is like in the 40s, which is quite a bit less than the old assault rifle max damage in a 3-second round. I have mixed feelings about this. I really loved the delete this scary thing in front of me aspect of assault rifles, but I can see how, as a GM, that is tough, because the moment you give an assault rifle to the crew, they can kind of kill a lot of things that they couldn't have taken on before. So this makes it so that the assault rifle is a little less amazing in combat, and maybe a little bit more manageable for the GM. I think if you want the kind of scarier amounts of damage, then frankly, have the gun spend more bullets and increase those multipliers, right? Instead of times 4, it's times 6 or something along those lines. Play with it, right? If you're used to a deadlier world where auto fire is scarier, do that. Have that fun. Like, continue to enjoy that, and just kind of roll with it. So I'm not afraid of making little changes to the system. But that is an aspect. Like, auto fire is a simpler mechanic, but it does bring down the top end damage of all of your guns, right? Now, to talk a little bit more about mechanics, let's get into roles and the characters themselves. All of the roles have changed. Every single one of them. Some of them have kind of swapped. Like, Lawman now gets backup, which was really what Nomads used to get. Nomads used to be able to, like, ring up the family, and a bunch of family members would show up. Now the lawmen or the police get that power. I am really excited about techs, med techs, and the executives. Those 3, these are big upgrades. Techs used to have jury rig, which was like, make this thing work for the next couple of combat rounds, and then shrug, it's broken forever, right? Until you get it back to the shop and can fix it. Now, techs get repair skills, they get manufacturing skills, they get all of these like item creation rules that are really good, and item augmentation skills, right? So you can invent features for existing gear, spend tech rolls, time and money to make all that happen. So your tech can be kind of a mad scientist now, and there's really good rules around it. So I think the techs as makers got big boosts in Cyberpunk Red. Medtechs, same gig. It used to be, you stop people from dying, and maybe you do other things. We don't know. Now medtechs certainly stop people from dying, but they can do surgery. They are the only people who can operate cryotanks, and they can make pharmaceuticals, right? So if you need stims in your group, because who doesn't need stims in a Cyberpunk crew, your medtech can make them. Same with the fast heal stuff that is now in Cyberpunk Red. So, medtechs are important. If you don't have a medtech in your crew, you want to know one on the street, because they're going to be able to give you stuff that you need before you go into combat. The exec role, right? I'm not going to talk about all the roles. I'm just doing high level stuff here. The exec role Cyberpunk has kind of filled a niche for a long time. And one of those niches that it has filled very well is the one-on-one gamer session, where you've got one GM and one player. Frankly, I think they've outdone themselves with the exec. The exec is the ideal role for a small team of players or a solo player, because the executive now gets a team of people. These are NPCs that are skilled at net running or driving or being a bodyguard. These are skilled professionals that work for the executive on some kind of common goal. So you can imagine, as a one-off player, you're like, oh man, I'm going to be totally screwed by the action economy when I go into a room with 3 guys as a solo person, because I'll get 1 action and they'll have 3, and I'll just get hosed. As the exec, you can bring 2 or 3 people with you, right? And now the playing field gets a little bit more evened out. Now, they're not as good as, obviously, as a player character, but they can take some rounds. They can put out some damage. You know, they can help you, right? So I think the exec role for that like smaller team or that one-on-one game, perfect. Really, really good move on R. Talsorian's part. I can't wait to have an executive in my game. It doesn't really fit with the campaign we're doing now, but I think there's some gold in there that I can't wait to see happen at the table. The last thing I want to say about the system here is the XP system. Experience points in Cyberpunk Red, so much better. Just so much better. If you haven't played the old versions, there was this improvement point system where, like, when you did a skill, you got improvement points towards that skill, and then once you got enough, the skill bumps up. I get it, right? It's real. It's realism. Through practice, you get better. But the accounting of that was such a bear. You had your skill list, and then you had some other sheet, or somewhere on the same sheet, you were tallying up how many improvement points you had towards each thing, and it was just tough. It was just tough to like account for all that stuff. Now you get a big flat bucket of XP, and you can apply them towards whatever skills or special ability you like. The special ability, I didn't mention that earlier. Special ability is what comes with your role. So fixers get the maker special ability, that kind of thing, right? Execs get the teamwork special ability. And it's like a skill, but it's different because it has very different rules associated with it. Some of them, like the net runners, are playing a mini game. They're doing a net run, which is a whole different game. They're like in a different place doing a net run. Their brain is on the net doing a net run. So, you know, all of that stuff is much easier. I like the XP system because it does 2 things. Obviously, I already mentioned it simplifies everything. And 2, it has an option for group rewards, right? This is critical for that team that wants to level up at the same rate. There is a column in the exec chart or in the XP chart to just say, look, as a group, we've accomplished a mission. Let's all get experience for that. How well did we do? Experience for that. But there's also the, hey, you know, like this mission was really all around our med tech. She did a ton of awesome role play, or cracked a mysterious virus that was running around through the city. Turns out it was being planted by some exec. That kind of thing. That kind of stuff. Individual rewards still in the XP system, and there's options for all of those, right? I really like that because there's like the warrior track. So the player who wants to do a lot of combat, they get rewarded for doing combat. The player who wants to do a lot of role play or investigation, they get rewarded for those efforts, right? So as a GM, you can say, I've got, tools to reward my players based on what they bring to the table, right? And that's just really nice. I'm a huge fan of the new XP system. I think that as you play Cyberpunk Red, you're going to note that combat is a lot faster than 2020 because there's no more hit locations and all that kind of stuff. And there's, instead of the hit locations where you used to like blow away a guy's arm, there's now crit tables, right? And that kind of stuff is critical for telling the kinds of stories you got out of Cyberpunk 2020. Because in 2020, your arm takes enough damage, it's useless, right? And now you have to tell the story of your character surviving without a left arm. That's tough. That's a tough situation to be in. It works. It works really well. Frankly, I want more crit tables. Okay, there's a crit table for when you take damage to the head and when you take damage to the body, but cyborgs need a crit table, and I can kind of see how a cyborg could use some of the same crit tables in there, but I kind of feel like cybernetics should get their own crit table, and vehicles need a crit table. Okay, so I'm going to make one as a homebrew thing. I really hope that Artel Saurian Games makes a cybernetics crit table at some point, or a vehicle crit table at some point, because like an air vehicle taking a little bit of damage ain't no big thing, but when like the engine gets shot, some trouble, right? So like I want that to be reflected in the crit table. Since we no longer have location hits, let's do something else, right? So all that to say, I'm so far a big fan of Cyberpunk Red. There's some really fun Easter eggs in there, like High Shelf Gaming gets a mention in the book. I'm so proud of that. I'm so like humbled by that. It's such a cool thing. It feels so good as someone who's been a huge fan of the game for so long, and just a lover of the genre and of Artel Saurian, and a content creator here for the last couple of years. Always going back to Cyberpunk. When I saw it, I totally got kind of choked up. And it was one of those things that just like validates and felt very good. So I want to say that I have given a lot of love and time to Artel Saurian Games in a public venue like this, and they have returned that love back. And I thank them for that. That's pretty much it in terms of my review of Cyberpunk Red, at least on first blush. I know this was a longer video. I just wanted to get into a lot of the little things that really jumped out at me. Again, I'm a huge fan of Cyberpunk. I've been playing it for so long. I just cannot wait to run more of this and provide more videos to you all. Last thing I want to kind of tease out is I'm going to start a series about running Cyberpunk Red. Okay, again, I've been doing this for 20 years. It's time for me to share that knowledge directly. And so I'm going to kind of methodically, concisely break down different concepts of running the game and give you, bite-sized videos that help you with specific topics as a new GM. So it's all about being a new GM, trying to convert some of our players into GMs, all of that good stuff. So check here more, subscribe, all that good stuff, for more videos that are going to be coming. Of course, more actual plays are coming out. We're always producing new episodes of us playing these great games. But like I said, I'm going to start an informational series of videos to help you run your Cyberpunk game better than I run my own. Okay. So again, thanks a ton for tuning in. As always, have fun and play well.